Okay, Wayne, to start with, we're going to talk about Newcastle, their dip in form in recent weeks. Have you got an update for us, please, on Eddie Howe's future?
Yeah, well, a bit of an update, Lewis. He's not absolutely nailed on to be Newcastle manager forever. From what I've heard, that's how the owners, the Saudi-based owners, public investment fund, see it. They see Eddie Howe. They did an amazing job last season, particularly getting Champions League finished ahead of schedule. But they are hugely ambitious, and from what I'm told, they sort of never saw Eddie Howe as the long-term manager forever. You know, kind of Jurgen Klopp dynasty, Pep Guardiola dynasty. That wasn't what they were planning when they appointed him, and that's how they still see it. And based on these recent results, they are concerned. From what I'm told, they're concerned about the dramatic downturn in results and performances. And obviously, there are mitigating factors. One of those being, an appalling injury list, and that's hit them really, really hard. But the view from Saudi Arabia is that the team should be doing a lot better. 7 defeats in 8. I think Premier League positions 9th, I believe, and their form is faltering, and they're not really being that competitive either. I mean, they're blown away by Liverpool the other day, and I think Newcastle were very, very flattered by a 4-2 outcome, and Eddie Howe's long-term future is up in the air, and I think he will be okay probably for the rest of this season, but beyond that, I think all bets are off.
And Paul, of course, as Wayne's kind of hinted at, a massive turn in form recently. I mean, they're now 11 points off top 4. They're going through a really, really difficult period. What's going wrong at the club? What's happened this season? Because they started on such a high Champions League. Everyone was so excited. And now that sort of excitement is really starting to diminish.
Yeah, and performances. I mean, I was at the Liverpool game, Liverpool-Newcastle game on New Year's Day, working at the game, and 4-2 flattered Newcastle. They had 2 attacks and 2 attempts on goal, and they scored with Isaac playing on the shoulder of Van Dijk. That's how they got the goal. Liverpool outclassed them, but this was a Liverpool team that didn't make Champions League last year, and Newcastle did. So it shows you where the 2 pivots have come in. I mean, I get the injuries, I get the suspensions. There was Tonali, which was a huge blow for them. But actually, I think he's been getting away with it for the last 2 or 3 weeks with the injuries and suspensions. You look at the teams that he's able to put out. Joe Linton was back in the side the other night against Newcastle. Looking at the starting lineup against Newcastle, they've got Gomeres in there, they've got Joe Linton, Isaac, Gordon, Botman and Shaw back at the centre-backs. Yes, I understand he's missing his goalkeeper, Pope. Wilson and Trippier didn't travel with the squad at all. They weren't on the bench, they just didn't travel with the squad at all. So I do get that he's had injury problems. You can only go to the well so many times with the same group of players, but these group of players that he's putting onto the pitch every week should be doing better, especially at home against Nottingham Forest. I mean, you look at what they had in preparation this season. They knew that they were competing in the Premier League. They knew they were competing in the Champions League and every other cup competition. I'm surprised they only went in with 2 strikers. One, knowing that Callum Wilson is injury prone. He's not going to play a whole season. He's not always going to be fit. And I think they went into the season light in numbers with the squad that they've got, in quality that they've got. And I think they're paying the price for that.
And could the game at the weekend against Sunderland, and of course we don't need to talk about the magnitude of that, it's pretty obvious to all fans how much that means to both sets of supporters. Could that really be make or break for Howe, Wayne? Do you think this could define their season going forwards?
Well, this is definitely the fixture that Newcastle did not want. They wanted a much easier fixture where they could rotate their players and get some game time for fringe players, and also give a much needed break to their first team regulars. Not going to be able to do that. They're going to have to field a strong team because they don't want the humiliation of losing to their absolute bitter rivals, and it's a huge game for both clubs as a result of that. I think Eddie Howe's in trouble, Lewis. I think there hasn't been much pressure or any pressure at all from the fans. He's absolutely adored by the fans. I mean, we put a story on one of our Newcastle pages the other day about Eddie Howe's future potentially being up in the air, and the fans were really angry as a result. With hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses, and fans were all saying pretty much the same thing. They love Eddie Howe, they completely back him, and he needs time. And the injury list is a huge factor. However, that's not how the Saudi owners are looking at it. And Eddie Howe and his coach staff, they will know that as well. They know what the expectations are. They know how ambitious the club is. Forget what Eddie Howe says publicly. He doesn't actually say a lot anyway. He doesn't give much away ever. But he knows that the expectations are really, really high. And, you could easily see a scenario where he is not Newcastle manager beyond the summer. Gareth Southgate leaves the England job, and Eddie Howe is the next England manager. That seems more and more plausible by the day.
I mean, that writing, I would say, is pretty much on the wall. Most people have backed Eddie Howe or Graham Potter for that role, haven't they? But looking at it then objectively from PIF's point of view, Wayne, what do you think their short and long-term goals are going to be? And I mean, really going forwards this season, what should the aims be now that they've crashed out of Europe? Yes, they could potentially go on a cup run if they beat Sunderland, but of course, that is a big ask going away to the Stadium of Light.
Yeah, the aim is to repeat the top four finish of last season, Lewis. That's the expectation. They want to be back in the Champions League. They've had a taste, and they want it all over again. They need the revenues as well. They've obviously had a massive revenue hike this season as a result of being in the Champions League, over 50 million. But they want that again, and because of the FFP restrictions, they can only spend a certain amount in the market. And I take on board completely Paul's point about they knew what competitions they were in. They knew the fixture list was going to be more intense, but they also are operating within sort of tight restrictions. So they couldn't really have spent too much more than they did spend in the last couple of windows, and having to kind of tread quite carefully with that. But they expect a lot less. They want world domination. They want to be next Man City. They want to be competing to win the Champions League and the Premier League every season. That is their plan. And I think they do not see Eddie Howe necessarily as the guy to get that long term for them.
I think this is a huge month for Newcastle. I really do. I mean, you opened the question with the game against Sunderland this coming weekend, but I'm looking at Newcastle's fixtures for this month. Yes, it's January. Yes, the window's open. How are they going to be able to bring players in? Tiny, the FFP line. Are they going to be able to bring players in? January's a big month for them transfer-wise. They've got Sunderland away. They're at home to Manchester City. They're away at Aston Villa, at home to a resurgent Luton, and then they're going to Nuno's Nottingham Forest. This is a massive, massive month for Newcastle.
It really is big. And I think the answer to it all then is it is make or break for Eddie Howe. This really could be the last few months of him in charge up in the northeast. So Wayne, it sounds as well like you've got some news about a former Premier League manager, a serial winner, we should say, who could be in the running for the job potentially.
Yeah, there's been links with Jose Mourinho, and from what I'm told, those are plausible links. Mourinho is very keen, and he's sort of making moves behind the scenes to indicate he is interested in the job. He's not expected to be Roma manager next season. Mourinho tends to do a manager's job just for 2 or 3 seasons. I mean, he never sort of lasts beyond 3 seasons, does he? Notwithstanding that second spot, Chelsea, or going back to Chelsea again. And he is very keen Newcastle job. Why wouldn't he be? They're a hugely ambitious club with lots of money to spend and an ownership who will back the manager in the market. And Mourinho still sees himself at that level. Newcastle fans, interestingly, have no interest whatsoever in Mourinho. So that would be quite a sell, because Mourinho's reputation in the Premier League is nowhere near what it was. However, the Saudis, they want a big name manager. They don't see Eddie Howe as that sort of big name manager, despite his popularity with the fans and all the things we've just mentioned. However, Mourinho has that kind of global appeal, and he is certainly of interest to them.
And Paul, from a Newcastle point of view, if you look at it from the owner's perspective, how far do you think he really could take them? Of course, you can offer some insight on his time at Tottenham, because most Spurs fans don't speak very highly of him when you bring up his name.
Listen, if I was a Newcastle fan and you were linking Jose Mourinho to my club, I certainly wouldn't be getting excited. I mean, you look at his style of management. I thought when he went into Manchester United, I thought that was going to be the right fit, and I thought he was going to do a job there. And if you ask him now, one of his greatest achievements was finishing third and winning the trophy with Manchester United. And you look at where they are now, it probably doesn't sound that silly. But I think as where his level is, or where his credibility is in the Premier League, I don't think he's looked upon as the same manager that was at Chelsea. When he was at Tottenham, it was very pragmatic. The football was very, very uninteresting. In fact, bland at the times. I mean, they went through a time with Conte and Mourinho playing counter-attacking football, 5 at the back at home. It wasn't a good watch. Mourinho he's a win now manager. He wants immediate success. He's not going to develop a squad. He's not going to build a team. It's not a project for him. We hear Erik ten Hag every week, whether it's the truth or whether it's him hiding behind failures, progression, plan, transition, stick with the process. And that's not Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho will go and he'll want players immediately and he'll want to get results immediately. But his style of football, I don't think in any way, shape or form would, one, suit the current Newcastle squad, or 2, excite the Newcastle fans at all. I think Eddie Howe has got a lot of credit in the bank with the fans.
You just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.